Next in the section on the quote process, we're going to talk about a real frustration that clients have. Something we've heard very consistently is the frustration on receiving quotes late, often the very last day before expiration. We've been surprised at how consistent this has been, and we've talked before about why this is, why brokers are reluctant to release quotes in an environment where pricing is so fluid. And if I release a good quote early, if a good broker releases a good quote early, that quote can end up just being the leverage to drive somebody else down because pricing is so fluid. So brokers hold on to their quotes to the very last minute. And so we've talked about commitment, a commitment to not sharing numbers as the key to being able to obtain quotes early. How do you enforce it? How do you enforce that process? Well, there's a couple of ways that you can go about this. First, we mentioned before that you should make a quote deadline and make it very firm and make it clear from the very outset. Make that quote deadline 7 to 10 days out from your expiration date and make it very clear that you're expecting that the brokers are going to come in and meet that deadline and not miss it. And you're going to have to reinforce with brokers two things. Number one, that you're not going to share numbers. You're going to have to say that repeatedly because they're going to be skeptical, because all brokers, good brokers, have been through the process where they've done the good work and delivered the low quote and only had it used as leverage against them. But if you're really committed to it and you convey that and convince the underwriter that you're not going to share numbers, that it's a fair competition, and if you also reiterate repeatedly that what the quote deadline is and when you expect to have your quotes and make that a firm understanding, the brokers will typically, most brokers will honor that deadline. What if they don't? Well, there's two ways of enforcing this process. Number one, you can tell brokers that if you set the deadline, say at 10 days out from your expiration date, and the brokers miss the deadline, you can tell the brokers they will lose their insurance companies. Every insurance company that has not quoted by that deadline for that broker will be assigned to another broker. If that ends up being the winning insurance quote, the broker who originally was assigned that insurance company will not get the benefit of that low quote. Another broker will win the bid. There's another way to approach it, especially with regard to direct writers. A direct writer is an insurance company that can only be accessed through its own sales force, such as Farmers or State Farm and some others. Or if there's an exclusive program. If a broker has a program that is available nowhere else, obviously you can't take those markets away from those salespeople. So what do you do in that case? Well, you tell them you're not going to honor the commitment not to share numbers if they miss the deadline. You're only honoring that commitment if they hit the deadline. And if you get started early enough, as we talked in a previous video, and you get them all the information they need and they give them enough time, and you've committed to not sharing numbers, and it is a fair competition, and they have a good relationship, they've picked the insurance companies they want to work with, so by implication they have good relationships with these underwriters and they should be able to get them to perform on time, it's reasonable to expect that they will hit the deadline.